Hello and welcome to the All About X-Men Comics podcast, where you'll find recaps and reviews of all the most recent X-Men comics, as well as previews for upcoming issues. Please keep in mind this will include spoilers and adult language. I'm host Scorpio Moon, cartoon fan turned comics fan, and hosting with me is...
Johnny Alpha, and I gotta agree with Deadpool. I think tacos are number one.
Alright, and number one book this week is going to be All New X-Men number 24. So here we are. Young, out of her time Jean Grey is being held captive by madman Imperial Guardsman Gladiator, hell-bent on winning any sort of victory he can over any Phoenix or any Grey.
Is he just really bumping up his douche meter with this? I mean, like, I've always thought he was, like, the lamest person to ever have a mohawk, but I never knew he was, like, this big of a cock before him. He's just totally being a true son of a bitch in this.
Yeah, man, I've never liked this guy to begin with, and he's not doing anything to help that now.
Right.
So the Guardians of the Galaxy have come to give our all-new X-Men a hand in rescuing Jean. Meanwhile, Star-Lord's dad, who's not actually working with our team, is still doing things to help them by totally gumming up the political works. He's even got Gladiator's own team agreeing with him over Gladiator.
There's an internal dispute because, yeah, a lot of people are like, well, he's not a Shi'ar and this doesn't include him, but is he wrong, you know? And of course, he's kind of one of our enemies and we don't like him, but he's not wrong here and stuff. It was really kind of cool the way they spelt it out. I just wish that didn't permeate the entire issue, that we actually got to see some kind of action in this instead of just another setup issue when there's only one more issue left of this event, but whatever.
Yeah, that did take up a lot of page time. The rest of it mostly being made up by their cool little plan in the beginning. They have new recruit Angela playing Possum out in space, just floating out in free space because she can. And then when a curious science ship picks her up, she comes in, wakes up, slaughters the whole crew, and bam, now they've got a Shi'ar ship to sneak in with. Now once the trial starts is where my nitpick comes in, and I think I had mentioned this during the previews because it was in the preview pages. But during a previous issue of All New X-Men, Jean reveals that she knows her whole family is dead. But when they reference the end of Grey's, the story where Shi'ar death commandos killed every member of the Grey bloodline they could, Jean acts like she's hearing it for the first time.
Well, I didn't take it to mean that she didn't know that they were dead. I just didn't think that she knew that they were slaughtered by space mercs, man. I think that there's quite a bit of a difference that maybe she thought it was like a boating accident, you know, or there's like several ways kind of up and coming why people can die. Usually outer space, killer aliens isn't the main thing that you jump to when you find out that most of your lineage has been wiped out. So if it wasn't like actually sat down and explained to her by somebody like maybe Rachel, then she probably didn't get the whole picture when she found out that her family was wiped out.
I kind of assumed that she was able to read it out of people's minds. That she's been reading everyone's minds and getting the whole future/history anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, that doesn't lend to the event.
Yeah, no, I suppose it doesn't. Either way, once she finds out, it kind of gets her amped up enough to break her escape. But then when she comes around to the end is where we finally get like our little bit of a mini battle before the issue ends, and Jean Grey interrupts it, but she shows up with this defeated attitude, just kind of like, they're right, I'm a monster, game over. And I guess they want us to consider that maybe she's resigned to her fate while we wait for the next issue.
Oh, I thought that she was actually just going to probably wig out and decimate some fools. I didn't think that she was defeated. I think that she went ahead and just accepted the fact that, like, yeah, I'm not powerful, I could destroy a planet. Do you think these guys are still going to want to fuck with me?
I guess like maybe a little fire in her eyes or something would have sold it better for me. But I'd be pretty happy to go that route too and have Guardians of the Galaxy 13, which is going to conclude the trial of Jean Grey, start with Jean Grey completely freaking out and slaughtering some Shi'ar commandos maybe.
Right, yeah, like her just Jean hulking out, just like, rah, and just like smoking some fools. That's really how I see this next issue going, personally. And I really hope it does. I mean, Bendis hasn't let me down with his X-Men run yet. This crossover event has been a bit meh. This is probably the least exciting or interesting All New's been since it's launched, but still not bad.
So on that note, would you go thumbs up or thumbs down and buy it or skip it?
I'm going to give this a thumbs up. The art's really good. There was some really kind of clever concepts that they came up with in this. There's a few things that left you going like, what, and why did they do that? But it's still worthy of a thumbs up. But go ahead and skip this for now. This is probably going to make a great trade paperback.
I'm gonna go with thumbs up. It's honestly not the most thrilling crossover event, but I think this issue has enough twists and turns and back and forth. It's got enough things happening in it and enough moments to build up a little bit of momentum again. I'm gonna go with buy it. You know, Manta gets one of the best shots in the obligatory battle, uncluttering the playing field, leaving room for Scott to make his dramatic shot, and his lines like, you know, do this or I will kill you, really keeps in with like the dramatic, more violent, emotional tone they're going for. We did get some of the lighter banter back this issue, so it gets you where you're going with enough to enjoy. But all in all, this whole thing, and this issue in particular, has been dark and moody with a frigid kind of space backdrop. I still like it a lot. Next up is X-Force number 2. Okay, so long story short on the recap, the mission is to find the bastard who's turning mutants into weapons and cause things like the Alexandria incident, the fictional event of terrorism that started the series. Everything ties into that, I guess. Not just the rescued mutant turned weapon, who has a name now and it's Meme, but also Hope's coma and Marrow's repowering all seems to circle around this. They go to a mutant member of Saudi intelligence who's willing to give them information if they, in return, kill someone for him. And then by the end of the issue, we find out that the guy that he sent them to kill is this guy's next in command, basically making him the new leader of his intelligence group and possibly a friend down the line. As this all is going down, we find out that Meme's body is being held in the storage system. That's all her body has ever really been, is kind of a storage system. She's a free mind more, really, that happens to also occupy more electrical things when she can, which of course makes her a great help out in the field when you've got to pick electric locks and shit like that. And she basically joins the team on Cable's side.
Right, she's like a transient spirit. She can hop from electrical things to, she just kind of floats around in an ether, which like is a really cool power. And you gotta admit, man, when Cable's just like smoking that fire dude's guards, that's some of the coolest action I've seen this week. And his narration, this series is on fire.
Yeah, man, the visual art is definitely doing its bit for it, no doubt. There's this real, just kind of like dynamic, kind of like fluid movement to the action, running and shooting, and then, you know, like Phantom X is doing his quipping and his hitting on everyone on the team as they're going through killing people and stuff.
Oh yeah, asking him to dinner. And yeah, when Cable's just snuffing them full, so he just looks down and goes, "You think Cable will have dinner with me?" There was some really funny lines that, and when Cable gets into the room with the guy that they're trying to snuff, and the dude's all like, "Is this because I won't vote for women to be able to drive?" And Cable's just like, "Yeah, for the sake of argument, it is, dude. That's why I'm here." Why the fuck not? I'm gonna kill you anyway, so yeah, that's just about as good of an excuse as anything.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, alright, if we're gonna have to have the obligatory talk, just get it over with. Like, whatever, okay. So let's see, we also learned that Cable's telepathy and telekinetics are still burned out, and that his precognition, his future seeing, is basically burned out too. He's got just enough left to see a few seconds into the future at a time, which doesn't really sound like much more than like a more fully loaded version of, say, Spider Sense. But it seems to be plenty enough for Cable, who's also, we see he's got that head unit thing in his suit he's wearing, are also some kind of psionic armor or something like that.
Yeah, it seems that, without spelling it out for us, that Nemesis has made this gear for him to kind of help him out in the field. And yeah, even though he's got a few seconds, it's a few more than he needs as how he lays it out with his precognition, which was kind of a cool little thing, because go on, and he's just smoking bodyguards and this and stuff anyways. He doesn't need more than a few seconds to know what these idiots are going to be able to do to take him out.
Yeah, man, just to dodge a couple bullets or see where someone's going to move. He's already a great warrior as it is, so he's still got some kind of power.
Dude, the video phone conversations at the beginning of this issue where he's kind of laying down the new mission plan for X-Force to all the teams, and he kind of just switches between all of them. I don't know, I really got a kick out of that. I really got, especially at the end when Havoc's just like, well, I can't give you permission to do this. And he's just like, I am not asking for your permission. I'm not asking for your gear. I'm just asking you to stay the fuck out of my way. Just laid it right out there. And I imagine that he told that to all the X teams, because he even was talking to Mystique in it, you know, because so he's keeping everybody up to speed on what he's doing. It's not like he's just talking to the good guys, because the mutant nation, as he's calling it, there is no good or bad guys anymore. They're all kind of on the same tilt with him, and it's all against whatever the humans are going to try to do to us because of this Alexandria incident, because we end up finding out that they've passed tons of legislation against mutants backhandedly because of this event, and the X-Men and the villains, they're too busy doing their normal stuff to even notice that, like, yeah, they're getting chomped off here. they're making new kinds of Sentinels and all kinds of stuff, while the X-Men are too busy fighting each other. So like this issue was very, very enlightening.
It's kind of a shame that this Alexandria incident is only really tied in to X-Force, because it doesn't really give all the other X teams to respond to it in any way, so it kind of makes Cable's calling out of it a little less relevant, because it's kind of more fictional. Like, he talks about how, the Jean Grey School releases a statement or something like that in relation to it. But because it's not like an ongoing thing out X franchise-wise, like, there is no real chance for them to react. And I can see why he would want to make a specific event, because using the Alexandria incident is the motion forward for so many other things going on in his book. But technically in the X-Verse, you don't really need a new event. There are so many other excuses that humanity could use to pass anti-mutant legislation. And part of the reason I call all this into question, because what Spurrier is doing again with this title really seems to be the same kind of thing he was doing with X-Men Legacy, where he's trying to make an X-Men comic about X-Men comics, and he kind of does like a deconstruction of it along the way. He has Cable point things out, like how there are all these different little factions of mutants, and whether they see themselves as good guys or bad guys, they're all still more preoccupied with fighting each other over their little pieces of turf versus trying to make a mark in the world.
Right. I get what you're saying about the Alexandria incident, but they need some kind of weird terrorist attack like that to kind of play this covert angle, this espionage thing that he's doing with this book. Because, they're going to be taking people out, but there's like this really kind of spy angle to this version of X-Force, which is quite different. So they just try to run with something that's been done previously in the X-Men. I don't think it's going to lend too well to like the type of tale that he's trying to tell with this specific run of X-Force.
Cyclops is probably my favorite of all the conversations, too, because you can so tell, like, when Cable's talking Cyclops, Cyclops is like, oh, so there are more like this? Can I recruit them?
Yeah, he was like into it. He was like the only one that was probably actually down to help. And he kind of like had to be a dick and tell everybody, all the other people that like, I wasn't calling for your help. He had to kind of do the reverse of that speech probably to Psych and just like, Dad, you can't come, all right? This is me and my friends. You're gonna ruin the mood. You're gonna like dad out on me, and you can't do it because you're Dad and I'm Cable. All right.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I loved it for that, and I'm so glad that we've got like our deconstruction X book back through X-Force. It's probably gonna make this one of my favorites.
I'm really starting to love Marrow. She is probably going to become one of my favorite mutants ever if they keep doing her as cool as she is in this book. Just like a straight up like hardcore crazy serial killer version of Boom Boom. You don't get cuter than that, man.
They start to fill us in on Marrow's new back history a little bit, too. She had lost her powers previously, and then she showed up, I think it was in X Factor, using kind of like a machine-driven version of them, like an artificial version. But I guess since then, she was abducted, Weapon X'd, and re-mutanized or whatever, and doesn't remember it, and she doesn't know. And Nemesis comments how she's kind of technically not a mutant, because, she was a former mutant who was then, mutated and then all this and that. But it's really cool how Spurrier's really specific with it. And as he describes her situation and how everybody else's powers work, he does a really, really good job of just being specific and making it cool. What was this thing for describing Marrow's situation? Something about, stabby, over-caffeinated, sociopathic muscle memory?
It's just like they were able to find a way to, mutate her unmutation. The way he kind of broke it down, it's very insane whatever this guy's doing. Because he didn't just make her like how Deadpool's a mutate. He actually found a way to make her kind of a new species.
Yeah, so even when Spurrier kind of uses a trope like mutant depowering and repowering, he's not necessarily willing to use it just the same old way. Even if he was going to use it, he'd still totally point out that he's using it. He's the kind of magician that likes to show you his tricks. But that's kind of what makes it cool to me, too.
Right, and his narration, even as blunt as Cable's is, and kind of how Cable thinks repetitively with his mission statement, even if it costs me my soul, I love the way he writes, the way these characters think, and I like that even when he's writing kind of a dumber soldier character, he just nails it, man. He makes you understand this guy. He brings you right inside their mind, and you're right there with him, man. I've never understood Cable this good in my entire life. I've always kind of really hated his character until Cable and X-Force, but this has even brought me more into, the Cable sphere. I get the guy, and I'm a fan of his now because of the way Spurrier just brought me inside the dude's head, at least in this version of him.
Yeah, man, he really has a way of finding just the right voice for his characters. A couple other little notes that I guess I was going to point out. There was a Star Wars reference again. Like I said, you're going to be seeing so many more of those in Marvel books from now on. As far as my favorite visual, I love the blood smears on the walls. There's just one of those touches that I really love. Oh yeah, and meme. I love the name meme. I mean, Spurrier was quoting so many memes back during Legacy, like the "Come at me, bro" and all this other shit. That the fact that he named a character meme, I don't know, maybe he's finally getting it out of his system or something.
Yeah, it's kismet, you know what I mean? It was like bound to happen. When we end up finding out who's in charge of the Alexandria project, some like chubby Russian guy looks like Boris the Blade from Snatch playing golf, and like I really like the way that they broke that down. We always expect some like hand wringing or some like evil strife looking guy, but 9 times out of 10 when something this horrible happens, it's always some guy like this.
Yeah, but still, what is he? A guy with too much power in a funny looking uniform. You think that might be another kind of punch at superheroes a little bit? Too much power, funny looking clothes?
Right. Military dictators as well. I think that Spurrier's touching on that, maybe making a comparison between the two.
Perhaps, man, perhaps. So, thumbs up or thumbs down, and buy it or skip it.
Dude, thumbs up. Like I said, this book's on fire. The art is just so gorgeous, especially like the hallway battle scenes, and then when Cable's just smoking that dude's guards, just so clean. And buy it, dude. This is shaping up to be the quintessential X-Force run.
Yeah, man, thumbs up here. Spurrier's done it again, made an X-Men comic about X-Men comics. Only now it's X-Force. So instead of psychedelics and mindscapes and evolutions and feelings, it's tactics and war and the future and safety of mutant kind. And I'm gonna go with buy it, because this might just be the best new comic out there. Okay, so next up is All New X-Factor number 4. Most of this book is spent battling Danger, who has a convenient dose of memory loss to go with her recent captivity. She seems pretty intent on killing Nil, and anyone who gets in the way of her killing Nil, but in kind of cartoonish villain fashion, she's like shooting energy beams that just knock you down a lot. Kind of like the Terminators in Terminator Salvation, who keep throwing everyone around instead of stabbing them or something.
Kind of reminded me of G.I. Joe, like how they have machine guns, but they never shoot each other. They shoot like a branch above the guy's head and it like falls and knocks him out.
Yeah, man, it's just kind of like fun fighting like that or something.
Didn't want to make it too hard, and Gambit noticed that, dude, even though she's acting like she don't remember the X-Men, she's taking extra special care, but if you notice, she is trying to jack up Nil anytime she gets close to him, so, there's no love lost between those two. And then we kind of really get to see that, Polaris is not okay, dude. They got her on some killer Paxil or something, but she is nuts, and she's almost psychotic, or psychopathic.
Yeah, she cannot spend too much time away from the base. Or maybe they're pumping something through the air that calms her down? Because, yeah, once she gets out, she kind of loses her shit, doesn't she?
Right, and this is another prime example where she just, gets, very sociopathic, man. She doesn't care what gets in her way, and whether she knew the thing or not, it was being mean to us, so I killed it, It's just like, okay, what would Havoc say? But it really does just lend to my point that that's part of the main thing that's got me still worried about this Serval Industries is she's not okay. She's still nuts from her past incidents, and I really like that they're playing around with that like they are.
She rips Danger apart down to the molecular metal level. I mean, luckily Danger can just inhabit anything, so she can build new bodies, and she even inhabits their ship at one point. And uses that as a weapon against them, which is kind of cool.
And we get really funny scenes of Quicksilver saving everybody, running them out as fast as they can. That was pretty funny, especially when he saves Nil.
And she's just constantly, not again, not again.
I really kind of wish that little fucker got smoked. I didn't like his character since the last run of Gambit. He really pissed me off on that. So the fact that he got to squeak by again made me a little aggro. But this was so Peter Dave X Factor, man. It had, the kind of weird conflict with some kind of really touching resolution at the end. This is why I love his writing, and that's why I love his name on the front of a book that says X Factor.
Yeah, man, talk about the touching ending. So, okay, Polaris might be the crazy one, but Danger's the one who's just kind of freaking out. I mean, not for no reason, she was held captive, but she doesn't even remember why. She's just attacking everything all over the place. She's totally having one of those, like, need a Snickers moments or whatever. Like, Danger, you turn into a computer mastermind freak when you're hungry. Have a Snickers. So then it ends with Gambit kissing her?
Yeah, he does. He just jumps right up and gives her a big old smooch.
That snaps her out of it, and now she remembers everything only up until she became captive, but then forgets everything after that.
Well, she remembers bits and pieces. She saw snippets of their fight. It's not, like, all cohesive in her head just yet. They pretty much tell her to just go ahead and let it go, you know what I mean? It's not going to do you any favors to remember that shit.
Oh, yeah, and stupid Nils about to remind her. It's like, oh, yeah, I was holding you captive and torturing you. And they're like, dude, shut up. Like, and that's kind of how it ends, with all the kind of, like, funny little, like, goofy kind of jokes like that and stuff. And Gambit's like, hey, Danger, you're not doing anything else. Why not join our team? And they're all like, what?
Especially Polaris, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you apologize to everyone else except for me? It's like, yeah, well, I'm not sorry to you, bitch.
Hey, you destroyed me on the molecular level, you know? Come on. You know, how am I supposed to respect that?
So, thumbs up or thumbs down, and buy it or skip it.
Thumbs up, dude. Like I said, I just love how this book's going. Very good-natured. It's got some nice action in it. Its art could be a little better, but that's not a nitpick at all. And buy this, man. This is a great X book. You should always buy something that has Peter David's name on it, along with the title X Factor. I mean, in the story that you know you're just in for a great read with those two names on a cover.
I'm gonna go with thumbs up. I like this combination of characters, I really just do. And Peter David put together a fun little story that kind of like gives into all the tropes it uses, but just gives into them wholeheartedly. And I'm gonna go with buy it. Danger's gonna be a great addition to this team, and these short arcs are really satisfying. And they take a little bit of break from the yellow and put a little more color into it, a little more blue, a little more purple and stuff, so they mix it up a little bit too. Next up is Wolverine number 3. Okay, so last issue, Spider-Man pushed Wolverine off the edge of a building, and then we start this issue with him catching him with the web at just the last second, and before Wolverine can, cut himself down and continue the game, Jubilee shows up looking to drag Wolverine into some action. I'll at least give them this for a series that's not really about much of anything. They know how to keep up some energy and momentum with it.
Right, I mean, well, this issue really stepped on the gas, because we jumped from this really stupid Spider-Man interaction into, like, yeah, him getting almost having an intervention with his friends, grabbing him and forcing him into, like, this goofy fight to try to help him bust out of this little whiny funk that he's in. You get to see a really cool fight scene. There's, like, this crazy cognizant robots. Basically, my favorite X-team, Brian Wood's X-Women, are just smashing the shit out of it. You got Rachel, M, Karima, Psylocke. They're all just doing their thing and stuff. Wolverine shows up. He gets called by Maria Hill before he runs over to the fight. It's very funny that he actually convinces Jubilee that, I gotta go pee in that alley really quick, before I go fight those robots. She's like, okay, Logan, hurry up. And he goes over and talks to Maria Hill. I don't know if he's working with her or not. That's kind of like another one of these things where, dude, if you're gonna, like, allude to something, like, at least fully explain it before you have him run back in and, like, having goofball fights.
I don't think they really needed the Maria Hill moment, because they referenced the whole Sabretooth thing that she wanted help with at the end pretty well anyway. I mean, the only reason I can kind of see for it is to have Wolverine turn her down and make it seem like he learned his lesson from talking to Spider-Man or something. Or maybe what it's kind of supposed to do is Wolverine turns down the Maria Hill mission and goes to run off and, fight with Jubilee and fight the Sentinels instead. Because he doesn't want Maria Hill, babysitting him on this mission. Because, she says they'll, work around his new condition. And he's like, I don't want people making excuses for me. And it kind of does tie into the battle with the robots a little bit. Because, like you said, Jubilee is just trying to be a friend. Like, she shows up to kind of, help Wolverine bust out of his funk. I mean, fighting a bunch of little piecemeal Sentinels from some rogue whatever. That's Tuesday for the X-Men. But, Wolverine, freezes up, almost gets smashed, and then just runs. He's like, fuck this battle. So maybe you're supposed to kind of get that some of it was Wolverine realized they were kind of trying to, put him into a training wheels fight, and he didn't want to be coddled, and that's why he ran away.
Or he can't even handle a training wheel fight, so he ran away because... Dude, I don't even... That's the problem. It's like, Cornell, he's almost got a good book with this issue. but he still gotta ruin it in these stupid little details that make no sense. You know what I mean? Why is he playing these weird little M. Night Shyamalan twist games? You know what I mean? Especially when you're not explaining anything, and it's the first arc, and it's the third issue. You shouldn't be throwing twists in until, you know, like the second act. We're barely getting to know the characters. It was kind of neat. You kind of get to know this Lost Boy character in this book. I mean, like, they should have focused on that more than him trying to throw more twists into this fucking plot already.
Yeah, man, I'd like to see Wolverine interact with his new team a little bit more. And it was kind of funny how, like, you know, it was supposed to be, like, a bunch of mercenaries and bad guys, and Wolverine can kind of poke fun at him, like, oh, come on. The only time you've killed anyone is in a video game. Like I could totally do with some more of that. Aside from the fact that he's not committing to anything in this series and leaving everything up in the air, I mean, he at least did kind of do a good job with having the relationship with Jubilee. At least someone cares about Logan. I mean, he's barely interacted with Storm just a little bit. He's hiding from her. Kitty's ignoring him, like, you know, she's wherever. You know, Jubilee shows up out in broad daylight, even though she's a vampire, but, you know, she's got special protections. They kind of reference light reflectors in another issue. I think here they use, like, sunscreen lotion and some other shit as an excuse. I mean, I don't think anyone really cares about that anyway. I mean, Jubilee's about as much of a vampire as Edward Cullen is.
I don't know anybody that's actually into that anymore. They should find a way to just retcon that and, I don't know, give her Terrigen Mist powers or something, you know what I mean? Because I don't know anybody that just thinks it's cool that Jubilee's a vampire now, you know? It's kind of like one of the stupidest things ever. And, like, it was from, like, one of the stupidest times in X-Men history ever. Like, they were really just trying to get a reader fan base back. It's like, 2 or 3 years before they did the Marvel Now thing. And, like, yeah, they had this whole, like, X-Men versus vampire crap go on, and it was really just to jump on the whole fad. The kids were, like, really into vampires at the time. Vampires were the zombies of that year. So I really wish that they'd just get the hell over the Jubilee as a vampire and just turn her into something else, you know?
I really don't need to be reminded that she has superpowers that just happen to be slightly vampiric in nature. I guess there are some other positives. I mean, he at least seems to be somewhat, like, self-aware of some things. Like, I like Jubilee's joke about how, like, she's the one who's immortal now or whatever. So even in Jubilee, and with her powers being changed, plenty of X-Men have lost their powers, had their powers change. Whether, like, it happened from experiments, secondary mutation, changes that occurred in an alternate timeline and stayed here, encountering the Phoenix, the Scarlet Bitch, like, so many things can happen to you. I mean, so many things can happen to you where you lose your powers, and Wolverine's acting like it's never happened to anyone else before.
I like this arc better than, like, the previous Cornell one, because at least Wolverine has a bit of a sense of humor and a personality, unlike he did in the previous incarnation. But, like you said, he's kind of got this prissy little emo syndrome going on. It's really annoying at some points, you know what I mean? It's like, look at Magneto and Cyclops, you know, like, they're missing their powers for the most part. I mean, it's not like Wolverine's powers are, like, gone. He still heals okay, you know what I mean? It's just really slow now. He's still got the metal shit in his body, so, I mean, like, he's got to have something still going on. It's just broken, you know, like Magneto and Emma Frost and Cyclops, you know. These guys, like, are they letting that slow them down? They're like, no, we'll just get some really powerful kids to come hang out with us and keep us safer now until we get our shit back together.
I guess they want to add more significance to this. Like, they want us to really think that Killable was the biggest deal ever. I mean, like, they really want us to, like, stay focused on that. Like, they really, really want to hammer this point home that what they think they're putting Wolverine through is the first time that he's ever faced true death. Like, they're not going to let that go, and they're going to keep doing it. They did it through All Killable. They're going to keep doing it probably through this whole series. Or actually, no, until what finally happens this summer, when they start a new arc that's going to be called 3 Months to Die.
And then he's going to get his series completely relaunched. So he's not going to die. He's going to get his powers fully back. You know, I mean, come on, people. Like, do the Mighty Ducks ever lose?
And even if they do kill him for a couple seconds, they'll all, like, have a circle jerk and pat themselves on the back, like, look how brave we are for killing our golden goose. And then doing whatever's just going to come next anyway. They just want the headline, man. They probably just want to be able to do that so they can put it and get USA Today to actually report on it. Like, remember when Superman died, like, it was on, like, Good Morning America and crap like that? Okay, so artistically, I think I'm kind of coming around to it. I mean, I kind of dug, like, the glossy-looking, colorful 90s style to begin with. But, they kind of drew the wrong Silver Samurai in the end of the book.
Right, it was, like, more original. Isn't the new Silver Samurai supposed to be, like, all skinny and sleek-looking?
Yeah, there's, like, a younger, skinnier, glowier-looking version of him. I don't know if there was, like, a wrong reference in the notes, but, like, that's not the Silver Samurai that's been running with the gang. So I don't know, like, I guess it's just a goof. I mean, I don't know how other way to explain it.
Right.
Okay, so they end on two notes, one kind of good, at least to me, and one kind of bad. We see in the end that Wolverine's new super invincible suit comes as a gift from the Superior Spider-Man.
So touching. So very touching.
So, I mean, I guess he got something more out of that conversation after all, and it'll be kind of like a little parting gift from the Superior Spider-Man, who I guess is going away because he's going to become the Amazing Spider-Man again. I don't know, the whole thing was just incredibly cool to me, and it does lend a little bit more of a credence to that whole I'm just measuring line from the last one. It means more than he was just measuring how far he could throw Wolverine. It also ends with Sabretooth on some kind of zany quest to find a magical device that's going to make him a god or something. They're trying to, like, put on this idea that, like, Sabretooth is bored now without Wolverine, so he's taking on stupid missions, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, if he wants to be pissed at somebody, he should go after Magneto now, because Magneto totally just bitch-slapped them all and then trashed their hotel in Madripoor, you know, like, that's who their new enemy should be, but yeah, they got this stupid quantum device. It's just so 90s, you know what I mean? It's just like, that's just what this book should be called. I love the 90s Wolverine.
So on that note, unless you've got anything else, I'm thinking thumbs up or thumbs down and buy it or skip it.
There is like some kind of retarded charm to this book where I can't just hate it like I want to. I gotta give this another mediocre kind of thumbs up. And like I got my thumb, like, it's tilting up, but it's like kind of sideways still, you know. I like some of the things that they did with it. I really like seeing my favorite X team just show Wolverine up. And, like, I don't know, I'd have gotten a little scared, too, if, like, you know, I can't do shit, but there are, like, you know, so many hot chicks just bashing these robots, and my powers are gone. I might have ran, too, you know, so. But I'm gonna have to just say skip it, dude. Anything that they're trying to do with this that's gonna mean anything is all just going to be torn apart and redid differently next year, so it's not worth your time.
I'm gonna go thumbs down. It's not without its charm, and in some ways I do kind of like it, but I still don't think it's particularly good. I'm gonna go with skip it, unless you're like a big fan of Cyclops or something and you want to see Wolverine embarrassed. Next up is Deadpool 25 Now. Okay, so Deadpool fights Crossbones, who ends up in just his tidy whities.
Right. I mean, like, in the midst of the fight, like, they're just battling it out, like, right there in this big street in the middle of New York, man. Like, they're beating each other with hot dog cookers and stuff like that. And, like, dude, Crossbones has got Deadpool on the ground. He's about to stomp his face. Wade looks up at him, and of all the things he could say to him, he goes, "You look like an Abercrombie greeter at Halloween. Do you know that?"
Yeah, man, because this comic is crazy.
That alone just made the book. And then the lady comes by, hits him with her bike, drops her dog. Deadpool catches it, and he's just like, "All right, Crossbones, here, catch the rat dog." Crossbones catches it. Dude, that's not cool to throw a dog, and that thing falls and hits him on the head. And Deadpool gets a chick her dog, puts her on her bike, and just throws her down the street.
It's like, what the fuck are they doing?
There was so much action. There was just so much silly, so much random. I couldn't help it, man. I just giggled like a little kid the entire issue, dude. Especially by the time Crossbones is just in his tiny whities. And they're just fighting, dude. Like, there's nothing else you probably could do reading this unless you have no sense of humor. And yeah, him and Crossbones, they take the evil shield guy and they straight up, like, dump him in a dump truck and trash compact his ass, dude.
Yeah, the two of them can't decide if they want to be friends or enemies in this issue.
Because that guy screwed him over. He wasn't going to pay Crossbones, but Crossbones still needed to fight Deadpool because Deadpool kicked his ass and put him on a hot air balloon, and, like, he ended up having his balloon popped. He ended up at sea, and he had to eat seagulls to stay alive, from what he said. So, I mean, like, there was some angst at Deadpool, regardless of what the S.H.I.E.L.D. guy not paying him. So, like, they settled their differences really quick, and then, yeah, went back to fighting, and, like, yeah, Deadpool went gangster, man. He was about to actually kill that big Peckerwood, man. He was, like, stomping on his throat, and if Preston and Coleslaw and that other dude didn't show up, yeah, he would have smited old Crossbones finally.
But then before that, he almost kind of didn't want to at certain points. It almost seems like his heart gave out and came back. He almost wanted to give up on violence and, like, turn his life around or something. Which is a point they mentioned a couple times in this book. I guess they're kind of getting ready to take it around to, like, some kind of the serious arcs. Like, I guess Deadpool's kind of got to go through this, what does it all mean kind of phase 2. The issue ends with him, like, cleaning up and taking his money, and he runs away to Europe to go on vacation, and then shoots a pigeon. Maybe.
Because nothing's gonna shit on him anymore, and then that pigeon does, so yeah, he just smokes it, so...
Yeah, man, they just really amped up the silly on this one, man, no doubt. So, because of that, we don't really get any answer on Preston and how she can be in 2 places at once, both in his head and in the life model decoy. Also, the Preston in his voice was kind of telling him to kill for a while. So, I mean, maybe it's just like a twisted part of his mind impersonating Preston?
Yeah, that's what I got out of it.
So, I mean, there are some twists.
They are going to be doing some soul searching, and ultimately this is going to come around to where he's going to go and want to find those family members that he's reminded of when they went to North Korea.
Which he keeps saying that he doesn't want to do, but he's going to have to at some point.
Right.
Alright, so thumbs up or thumbs down, and buy it or skip it.
Thumbs up, man. The cover is just classic. Tacos are number 1. Totally doing a play on your hated number 1s of the Point Now issues. And just for the you look like an Abercrombie greeter on Halloween line, buy this, dude. Like, it is just so freaking funny. It's a great issue.
I've got to go with thumbs down, because it turned the story into kind of a mess. They should have just ended this arc like an issue or 2 ago, like I thought they did. And then this would have been like better stuff as kind of like an afterword just for it, maybe. Which I guess technically it still is, but whatever. I'm gonna go with skip it because it sets up something good with Deadpool wanting to reevaluate his life, but I think you can just come back later when that part actually happens and read this as the afterword in the trade. Finishing up the reviews is X-Men Legacy number 300. Why is it all of a sudden 300? I don't know, because it is, but maybe it at least is actually ending for a while, because the new series is just going to be called Nightcrawler now instead, and it ends on a very good note, introducing to you, maybe technically again, a character called Forget-Me-Not, who might just be the coolest X-Men you've never ever heard of.
Right. I mean, just love this character.
His power is that as soon as you look away from him, you completely forget that he ever existed. So it's kind of like he's an X-Men, and he's been an X-Men for a very long time, like practically forever, but, you know, everyone just completely always forgets that he's there. X-Men Legacy has him recounting his stories to a young girl who was scarred and disfigured and was trying to, like, run away from home to the X-Men after all the terrible shit that happened to her. Because, you know, she's a fan of the X-Men and a fan of superheroes. By the end, he kind of convinces her to go home, and I guess not run away from her problems? To make a long story short, I mean, I don't want to undersell it by doing that, because, I mean, like, she was raped and goes through, like, this really traumatic shit, and, like, her story, I mean, it's an important one, but along the way, they really packed this whole thing in with a lot of feel-good stuff about, you know, how you see the world, and being noticed versus being ignored, and making a difference. Personally, I was kind of more distracted by, like, the clever shit, the deconstruction-type storytelling that you can tell was, like, probably a big part of Spurrier's part in this. They have those 2 superhero mutants, and, like, they want to help the world, you know, like, be superheroes, but they really wish, like, you know, they had this guy's power, because being a mutant means getting swept up in X-Men crap all the time. And they kind of highlight how, as a superheroes spend just as much time, if not more, battling their arch nemesis and their rivals than they do actually just helping people. I mean, they don't even necessarily put it down as a bad thing. They kind of say, hey, you know, if a ninja comes looking to kill Wolverine, he has to fight it. It's not like he can help that. But then they actually absorb Forget-Me-Not's power so they can be forgotten and just help people. And they even highlight the whole thing by having Cyclops and his team show up to recruit them, like to highlight how you get dragged into X-Men shit.
Right. It was a really neat play on the Christos Gage run of Legacy. That's the thing that I really liked about this. It was a very clever little story that Spurrier came up with this character, but it also highlighted the previous runs of this book because they touched on also Age of X, the Mike Carey crossover with the New Mutants, which was really, really a neat little story because they never focused on this part of it when you read of Age of X. It was something that I wish went on for longer. But basically, the whole entire thing was this construct in Legion's mind, and all the other X-Men got dragged into it. And they were fighting these things over and over again every day, but they were the same people being regenerated, trying to take over their fortress day in and day out. And Forget-Me-Not ended up finding this out, and he ended up finding out that these make-believe characters, sure, they disappeared and were reborn again the next day, but when they were laying there dying on the battlefield that night, they went through pain and suffering and everything else, which I thought was just such a great little twist on that little arc that I loved, you know? So, I mean, this was just a great, great little read all around.
Yeah, man, that was really good, taking us into it and kind of, I mean, like, through sharing the stories with Forget-Me-Not, like, it almost kind of gives you, like, those soldiers, like, them little disposable guys' like, point of view. So, yeah, like, there's that, and I think my last really favorite clever thing, once again, they kind of, like, you know, they make fun of the tropes, how, like, shit always happens at just the right moment, but then they attribute it to Forget-Me-Not being there to do all this shit during the X-Men battles. But, you know, he's just forgotten.
Right, yeah, he's the guy that, like, actually opened the door, or, like, went in and broke the Sentinel, but, like, they always just, like, yeah, we just were really fortunate that day. It's like, yeah, it was actually me. Yeah, and I really kind of got choked up with the sentiment that, like, Charlie Xavier was, like, the only person, and he had to actually make a mental note. 1 second every hour, he had to remember, he put, like, a actual memory thing, so he remembered that Forget-Me-Not was an actual guy, and he was there. And when Chuck died, that really just broke Forget-Me-Not up, you know what I mean? And that's why he went and seeked out Mimic and Omega. He wanted Omega to take his powers away because, you know, like, nobody knew him. Nobody ever looked at him again. And he could try to make friends with Rachel and Emma, and they could probably try to do the same thing that Charlie did, but they would just die too. That's how he saw it. So, like, he just kind of wanted to pack it in there for a little while. And then when he talked to Mimic and he talked to Omega, they kind of laid it down to him that, dude, yeah, I know that you think it's hard, you know, that people see you and then forget you, but you're like 40 and like you don't have any past history and stuff. You know, like, it's bad enough when they don't know you're there, but just think about, like, when you're actually physically there and they just forget about you anyways. And it's just like, damn, dude, that is just so true. It's such a hard-hitting message to just stick in an X book, you know what I mean? That's when you know that these guys are just really trying to up the ante with these new books. Dude, honestly, they did X-Men Legacy just about this character. I mean, even if it's just like a one arc, I would totally read it, man. Like, I'm into this. He cracks me up. His whole little thing, like, how he ends up resolving the situation with the cot girl, you know what I mean? And she's, like, actually worried about him. He's just like, don't, man. I've done this before. The thing forgets I'm here just like everything else does. It's like, it's just like, right on, man. The guy, he's like Joe Dirt, you know? He's unshakable in this virtue, you know what I mean? It's a great character.
Yeah, man, I would totally read, like, a 12-issue run of Forget-Me-Not.
Right. And I wouldn't want to see them go too far into the past and try to shove him in, like, every arc. But, like, to do something new with the character and maybe have him run around with one of the X teams, like the X girls or something, have him hang out with them for a little while in the arc and maybe go play with the X kids and have them forget him. That would actually be fun. I think that would be something that, like, they'd probably actually need to do with a couple of these teams to actually kind of make them fun in my eyes.
Yeah, man, imagine that. But, thumbs up or thumbs down, and buy it or skip it.
Thumbs up, dude. This was just such a great last issue to such a great series that is X-Men Legacy. It ended on such a great note, introduced such a crazy new character, and buy it, dude. This book is exquisitely drawn. It jumps through all 3 incarnations and iterations of X-Men Legacy that we've had recently, and it's just a nice little one-shot.
I've definitely got to go thumbs up. It was clever as shit and took me off guard just how good it was. I'm going to go with buy it, either for the Age of X reference story, which was very cool, or for the most touching mention of the recently deceased Professor X that I've seen yet. Okay, so the previews are pretty quick for this week. We've got Uncanny X-Men NOW, where it's going to take all of 1 page turn for S.H.I.E.L.D. to pick up David Hijack. So let's see what Scott's game here is.
Right, because it's on. It's afoot, as Sherlock Holmes would say. There's something bigger going on than them just dropping him off, but they couldn't let him in on it.
Also, we're going to check in on the real Agent Dazzler, who's being held somewhere. It's not pretty, but I really want to know what's happening with that, and I'm almost kind of ready to see that story get resolved.
Right, because, I mean, like, I like Daz, you know, and, like, she's never actually got to do anything besides be some cheesy disco star, and, like, they actually brought her out, she's gonna, like, be somebody important in X-Men, and then, like, she just gets kidnapped, and, like, she gets Zero Dark 30'd, you know, by Mystique. It's kinda like, fucking poor Daz, dude. Let that poor little disco biscuit do something.
Yeah, man, it almost seemed like as soon as I knew that there was an Agent Dazzler out there doing shit, it already wasn't actually her. It's like, fuck.
And I like her little white zip-up shield outfit, man. That's hot.
Yeah, so let's just get the actual Dazzler in it.
Yeah.
We've also got Wolverine and the X-Men #2. So suddenly Phoenix symbols are turning up on communication devices and screens all over the planet. Boy, is Gladiator gonna feel stupid.
Right. I mean, honestly, like, after this whole trial of Jean Grey, if I came back, the X-Men that do come back to the new Xavier School, I hope that they just, like, talk Gold Balls and Tempest and Triage, all them guys into, like, you know, when we find Kid Gladiator, we're just gonna beat the shit out of that kid to teach his dad a lesson for being a cocksucker. That's what I do. Whoop the shit out of him, cut his mohawk off.
Yeah, man, you're a disgrace based on association.
I'm actually looking forward to it. I half-assed liked the last issue. I think this book might actually have a chance of picking up with this new writer and its new direction. But I'm not trying to get my hopes too far up. You know what? I also thought the Star Wars prequels were going to be good. So.
Ouch, man. Yeah. Ouch. Yeah, temper your expectations a little bit. And then we also get X-Men #12.
Yes.
So our two cliffhangers were Jubilee disappearing and Madeline Pryor about to be brought back. So once again, if the Imperial Guard really had any intelligence, this is another one they'd be looking out for.
Yeah, it was going to be like another Jean Grey running around, right?
Basically, just her clone.
Dude, like, why couldn't Gladiator just, like, wait a week, you know, and then try to kidnap little Jean Grey?
I mean, they make fun of how, like, Deathstrike had outdated intelligence in the beginning of this. How did Gladiator not know that someone was bringing back Madeline Pryor, or that pieces of Madeline Pryor were, like, still existed somewhere on Earth somehow? Think he'd be onto that one. But, no.
Yeah, I mean, like, why isn't he going after, like, the rest of the Phoenix Force 5, you know what I mean? Why isn't he, like, busting anybody that's ever been a Phoenix, you know? It's kind of goofy.
Oh yeah, good one, man. I even thought about that. You've got the whole former Phoenix 5 out there and all that shit. He's not doing anything about that. He's just picking on a poor little girl because Gladiator is just a dumb fuck, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and all it's doing is, like, it's probably going to give the X-Men their most evil villain, you know? Like, it's the only kind of future I can see for her is she is just going to break bad, so bad, and it's not going to be pretty, dude. She's just going to decimate all.
And then she's going to wear a Zorn helmet.
Yeah, which I'm not down for. I mean, she's like a hot redhead. You don't need to wear a skull mask when you're good looking. But whatever, man. If she thinks it's scary, I'll go ahead and let her go with it. I don't want her to kick my ass, too.
Okay, so let's head into the end of the show. Why don't we start wrapping things up by spiking the punch?
Yeah, man, spike it up.
Oh, yeah!
Spiking the Punch is a segment where Johnny and I each recommend or introduce one non-X-Men related comic. And Johnny Alpha, you're going to lead us off this week with?
I'm going to my normal wheelhouse. I'm going to be hitting up Image Comics with a book that I have been waiting so long for. I'm going to be spiking with David Lapham's Stray Bullets Killers #1, or as some fans like to refer to it, as Stray Bullets #41. It depends on whether you are an old fan or a new fan, but it doesn't really matter with this issue because this is kind of like a great little one-shot to really kind of introduce new people to the universe of Stray Bullets, while at the same time letting old school fans know that he has not lightened up on the brutality of this comic. And basically with this, you get a look at, you know, your favorite kind of psychos from the previous iteration. Spanish Scott's definitely there. And basically he is working security for this gangster that runs the strip club, also underage prostitutes, and you kind of follow this young kid, Eli, who has a thing for boobs, so he sneaks in with his dad, and he sneaks to the titty bar, and, like, he likes to look at him and stuff, and ends up finding out that one of his babysitters and one of his friends that's also a kid that he plays with, sister, is a stripper there, and also moonlights as a prostitute. This does not end well for her. You basically end up finding out that Spanish Scott kills her. The kid, in a kind of a very stupid way, lets Spanish Scott know that his dad also knew that this girl was a prostitute, which doesn't go well for poor little Eli. And this kind of really just is such a great new start to Stray Bullets, which just go ahead and start it off the way that the original one did, with, a kid's life just completely destroyed by this idiot Spanish Scott's ruthlessness. And probably he's going to come around to meeting Virginia Applejack, our previous kind of heroine reoccurring character that was working against Scott and his, bosses. So I really, really am just so excited to see where Stray Bullets goes from here. I was such a huge fan of the original series. I'm a huge fan of Lapham's. Even after Stray Bullets ended, I've pretty much read everything that he's done. I got all the issues of Young Liars. I got his Crossed. I've got his Caligula comics at Avatar. This guy is just like one of my all-time favorite writers, but he has gone back to his true masterpiece. This black and white, dark-humored, noir extravaganza that is just brutal.
Oh, so Stray Bullets fans have a little bit of a numbering controversy themselves.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah, man, but Stray Bullets to me seemed like one of those things that, once again, and we mentioned this the last time, it's one of those things that it's really an example of things that you can do with comics besides superheroes. And even besides, supernatural or sci-fi or anything else. It's just a real different kind of story than you might be used to reading in comic book form. And especially also because it's black and white, and I don't know, something about just the kind of penciling style used in the panel layout looked, I don't know, just more serialized. It looked less comic booky and more it's just really this idea that it is a graphic novelized story with graphic images.
Yeah, he has an old style, probably more, you would think of him more of a cartoonist than an actual comic book, because you're right, his art almost has a Sunday morning cartoon look to it. You would think that you're actually reading something good-natured if you didn't actually get in and notice the subject matter. Another thing that I really like about the writing of this story is he doesn't beat you over the head with beginnings. His stories always start with the story already in motion, and he never really goes back and explains how you got to this situation. You're just there with these characters, and you got to play it out. And then you do get a little bit of revelation about how they got there. And he doesn't just completely go back and over-explain everything. You just kind of start these stories already in motion, and then you finish them up. And 9 times out of 10, it doesn't end up too good for anybody. It's along the same lines of Ed Brubaker's Criminal. It's one of these noir tales where pretty much everybody pays. You know what I mean? The kind of virtuous people, the criminals, the scumbags, nobody gets off. You know what I mean? Nobody gets a free ride. It's just brutal and almost lifelike if it wasn't, also trying to be a little cartoony at the same time.
Yeah, man, and talk about not beating you over the head. That was one of the main things I noticed with it. You cannot read this book passively. You really have to kind of play detective along with it. Sure, some things are pretty much right on the surface. That some dude who, hey, I'm a carpet salesman, I'm always running away for work, and he goes to the strip club. That this guy is up to some shit. Stuff like that's a little obvious, but as far as how all the other characters interact with each other and, what they mean to each other and, exactly what's going on, you really do have to kind of, detective it out a little bit.
Right, he keeps it vague, so, like you said, I wouldn't really kind of recommend this to a passive reader or to somebody that's, new to noir. You might want to read a little Sin City, maybe get into Ed Brubaker Criminal, and then work to this one, because it really does kind of keep a lot of the character motivations vague at the beginning, so it might be a hard read for some.
And now, what exactly is the deal with the characters? You mentioned something about a recurring character, but, is the Stray Bullets done, is it different people every issue?
Sometimes.
And, there's these kind of random stories around this world?
For the most part, yeah, that's pretty much the best way to describe it. You will see Spanish Scott pop up. There's a couple other hitmen that you'll probably get to know a bit. And then Virginia Applejack, she's this teenage blonde girl. She's kind of another very recurring character. And she also has this imaginary character that he does specials with called Amy Racecar, which will probably be popping up sometime in the near future too with her colored specials. But yeah, that's basically the best way to explain Stray Bullets. Is it's in this city where there's really no morality, and it kind of just paints this kind of grim picture of humanity. But it's no different than any other noir tale. But yeah, it kind of revolves. you'll see a lot of the same characters again in some capacity. There'll be like a minor character at the bar and in a later issue and stuff like that. So everybody kind of shows back up, at least the ones that don't get killed, you know what I mean? But it's not really like a comic book that focuses on just one person ever.
Right, so that almost kind of fits the kind of theme I was presenting of having to figure it out. It's like even the main narrative, if there is one, is kind of in the background of the story for the characters to reoccur. Like, they might have an ongoing story, but it's not necessarily just front and center for you to see. You have to kind of fill in some of the gaps and see how it all evolves through the lens of these different stories.
Correct, man. You just explained it perfectly.
Heck of a choice here. You talk about the whole idea of Spike the Punch, like being... I mean, there are lots of different reasons to Spike the Punch with a book, but I mean, talk about one that's like stepping outside of what you might normally read. Whether it's like by the way of the story or by the look of it. Stray Bullets, like this Killers issue, like steps outside in so many ways. And it was a good violent joy too, man. I mean, you're like cutting through people's necks with safety razors and shit, or not safety razors, but you're cutting through people's necks with like, what was that, like a hand razor kind of thing? Like one of them little like pop-out things like I might use at work, it almost looked like.
Yeah, a box cutter.
Yeah, like just like a box cutter thing, just...
Yeah, Stanley knife or, razor knife. There's several terms, but yeah, most people just call them box cutters. Yeah, which is kind of like a really shitty thing to kill somebody with. It just was really good to see that he didn't, like, friendly up Stray Bullets now, since it's not completely indie. Even though it still says El Capitan, which is like David Lapham's personal studio. It's an Image book. I thought maybe they might want him to church it up a little bit, but I am so happy to see that this book still has all of its teeth.
Nice, man. And for me this week, I've got the returning #1 by our good old buddy Jason Starr from Shit for Brains Max.
Yeah, but I mean, this was neat. It actually shows that, like, the guy can write if he has, like, something decent to work with, so.
Through Boom Studios, he's telling this story called The Returning, which kind of fits into that whole, like, it's a zombie, but not really kind of zombie genre, where, like, the name invokes zombies, and, like, the imagery is all rising out of graves and shit. But it's not really about that. It has to do more with coming back from the dead in some other way. Maybe think a little more like Revival, or maybe even technically, like, I mean, on a sliding bar scale, closer to something like Mind the Gap, where you just got, like, this female protagonist who comes back from the dead under mysterious circumstances, which is almost a genre in itself anymore. Here, the returning people are called Changers, and the in-universe story is that people come back from the dead coming from near-death experiences. Or maybe you were just clinically dead, or you were comatose for a short while, something of that sort. Some kind of near-death experience-y kind of thing. But then the people who do come back from these tend to go psychotic and go on killing sprees. So, I mean, they're not like, walking corpses or whatever, but they're definitely violent, they're definitely dangers. But you can't always tell exactly who they are. Now, I don't know if this all really sounds that encouraging so far. So, I mean, like, why on earth do I actually think it's any good? What I think they do is they do a solid job of establishing this world. They introduced one fantastic element, this idea of coming back and it changing you. But the real world continues to operate around it. How, like, even just being a potential changer, it gets you caught up in the system. Doctors are trying to manipulate things or move you, like, shift you around. How even in this kind of fictional world of undead, lawyers can still get you out of anything. Which is probably, like, the most realistic aspect.
You got SWAT cops guarding teenage proms and stuff, yeah. Like, these people are still trying to go on with a normal life, but, I mean, like, there's no way they really can, because, like, this is just... I don't know what else to call it besides kind of a zombie tale, even though, like, it's outside of one. They're definitely people that died and came back, and they came back with something that's definitely missing, because they come back either psychopathic or sociopathic. So, I mean, it's kind of a neat little take on that kind of trope, which I've noticed some people have been taking a bit. Like, there was a really good BBC show along this line called In the Flesh, about cured zombies that were able to re-enter society, and there was also, like, a really good French show that I was told about that was really good. And, like, there's actually going to be an American TV show that's going to be, like, on ABC. It's probably going to suck, though, but... So they're kind of playing with this idea that, like, they know that zombies are played to death, you know what I mean? But they're actually experimenting with other things that they can do with undead characters, which I got to just applaud them for, you know what I mean? Thank you for, like, actually trying to think outside of the box with something that's already established and popular.
Yeah, man, and to actually do that, but not just be like, hey, look, we twisted one thing, look how it's different. But to, like, play it all out with picketing protesters and prejudice and, like, to build a fully realized world around it. I mean, as far as story, if you want some of the spoilers on it, I mean, basically this girl dies on her prom night. Her drunk piece of shit boyfriend kind of tries to rape her and gets them killed in a car crash. And that's where she has her near-death experience in the crash. But, like, it's not all white lights and, go towards the tunnel. But, like, she has this, like, flesh-eating nightmare. It totally twists that trope to the story's advantage.
Right, I mean, like, and that was such a vivid little scene with, like, the characters, like, all white with, like, the red stuff painted on them. And they just, like, kind of were dancing with her, and then they just start eating her. I mean, like, that was probably by far some of the most gripping zombie imagery I've seen in comic books in a while, man. This really insane little scene with that.
Yeah, Matt, I love that scene, and I love thinking about it as the idea being maybe that, like, whatever it is that you encounter, whatever that evil was that you encounter when you're near death there, like, that's what changes you. I mean, from there, it basically does a lot of typical stuff. You've got her murdered family, you've got girl on the run, a mysterious stranger, taking your first step into a larger world. I mean, I'm not trying to put this all down or even call it cliche, just pointing out the elements that are in the story that they combine to make it up. It ends with a great-looking gunshot. I love the gun he draws there. And then the promise of more violence to come. So at least for right now, the returning has got my attention.
Right, and I mean, like, you can't escape tropes and idealism. It's at the end of the day, it's a horror story, and this is going to be picked up and read by horror fans. So there's going to be certain things that they're going to expect to see in this, even though they're taking a different angle on zombieism. This is still a horror story, so there are things that, like, it's going to have to still follow some kind of a narrative that people understand and respect. So I don't mind that at all. I did think that the whole prom thing was a bit cliche and a little overdone, but what the hell, man? It was just really trying to drive home that this was a nice girl that something really horrible happened to, and that, like, she's actually going to be something very positive in this kind of fucked up future because this happened to her. So whatever, man. Like you said, I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of this book.
The last little thought that kind of runs through my head is that, like, maybe this is the precursor to, like, the normal zombie thing. People start coming back from near-death psychotic and then eventually come back from full-death psychotic later. As maybe, like, as kind of, like, how that would build up in a zombie apocalypse. Just a random thought, though, not really important to the story in any way. And there's nothing from the story to insinuate that. Just kind of something I was thinking about.
I could see that maybe, but I really hope not, I really like that this book stands apart from that kind of stuff, so if they just start showing, like, run-of-the-mill zombies in it, like, in the second act, I'm going to get kind of a little pissed. It depends on how good the book remains, though. I'm really kind of like, it's Jason Starr writing it, I can't believe that it's actually tolerable, but, like, I'm definitely going to be reading the next couple issues with high hopes and really expect to see, like, something, because it's Boom. And, like, they really always surpass all my expectations, I go and buy, like, the Suicide Risk $9 trade paperback and bought one of the best reads of the last year. So, I mean, I have nothing but hope that, like, Boom Studios will actually bring the talent out of Jason Starr's talentless ass.
Yeah, man, I mean, Boom Studios has a lot of really great books. I mean, I love that publisher, and they're definitely not afraid to take chances on some things, but some of these books I've read, like Hypernaturals, Deathmatch, Extermination, I mean, definitely Deathmatch, like, they go really off the rails towards the end, and you're just kind of like, what the fuck did they let that series do? So, I mean, hopefully The Returning isn't one of those.
That feels you. Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, this almost feels more like an IDW book than a Boom, but yeah.
But, I mean, hey, one way or another, I mean, no hard feelings, Jason Starr, right? I'll still read your work.
Yeah, man, you had a really good first issue. I mean, like, you definitely earned a round of applause for that one, Jay.
Hooray! But yeah, my recommendation this week, and it is a recommendation, is The Returning #1.
And I gotta say, I enjoyed it too. I was kind of like, a zombie comic, Jason Starr, what are you doing, Stubby Scorpion? I had fun with it, so yeah.
Okay, and Spike the Punch this week was sponsored by our radio home, psn-radio.com.
PSN Radio, the best in talk radio anywhere.
And what kind of segments can we find to wrap up the night with? How about, what have we not done in a while? I kind of forget. Screw it. Let's start with the sexiest moment.
Oh my.
And Johnny Off, what did you think was the sexiest moment in all the X-Men comics this week?
I gotta go with X-23 and All New X-Men, with her just like laying down kind of the law of how she's gonna go sniff out Jean Grey and kick some ass to the Guardians of the Galaxy. That was hot.
Oh yeah, nice choice, man. You can't go wrong with the Wilf.
Nope.
And for me, my sexiest moments came from X-Force number 2 and Psylocke's ass in that painted-on uniform.
Mm-mm.
I don't think any clothes besides maybe yoga pants fit that way in real life, but I'm not complaining.
I mean, like, I really don't know how she gets some suits on, but I'm glad that she does.
Haha, yeah, man. And how about a pity the fool?
Yeah, alright, I'll pity the fool.
I pity the fool!
My pity the fool is anybody that tries to get in Cable's way, his new mission of just being this ultimate ex-spy mutant badass, you know? He is not going to take any prisoners. He's going to smash you up. He's going to probably just go ahead and pee on your dead body, you know? So just don't mess with him.
You know, I was almost going to go with a pity for poor Forget-Me-Not, but, I mean, at the end of the day, Forget-Me-Not is happy with his life because he knows that he's making a difference with being who he is. So I'm just going to go ahead and agree with yours, man. I pity the sucker that doesn't listen to Cable and take his advice and just stay out of his way.
Pity the fool.
Because this Cable is relentless, and he's got a hit squad that will gleefully just murder the living shit out of you.
Well, if not all of them, at least Marrow. And she will dance after she kills you and giggle.
And Phantom X will get turned on.
Yeah, want to take her to dinner.
And let's end the week with... Oh, here's one we haven't done in a while. Let's end the week with In Your Face.
Okay, and yeah, my in-your-face moment would have to be when Deadpool throws Crossbones the little rat dog and he gets hit in the head with the wrench, man. That was just too insane and too just hysterical. And so just the meaning of in your face.
Little rat dogs in your face.
In your face! In your face!
And my in the face goes to In Your Face Gladiator. You got pwned by Star-Lord's dad. Your own team questions you, agrees with someone else. Meanwhile, other Jean Grey and Phoenix shit that you totally missed is going down all over Earth. And then that snot-nosed brat Cyclops opened his optic blast and literally gave it to you in the face.
In your face!
Okay, so don't forget that our social media home is facebook.com/allaboutxmen comics podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time you choose to hit play.